Hey there, Alan from Ural Junkie. How's it going? And to my friends in Russia, Privnyet. Today we're going to change the valve cover gasket and adjust valves. As you can see from this picture here, after I came back from the desert, yeah, I definitely have a leaking gasket. It has been like that for a while. I think there was a song back in the old days called "My Valve Cover Gently Weeps," but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, let's get started on this, and first thing we need to do is remove the spark plugs. And the reason we need to remove the spark plugs is so that we don't have to fight against the compression as we turn the cylinder over. You know, so the spark plugs look just pretty much perfect. Not a problem with them. Looks like the engine is running good. So the next thing we need to do is remove the valve cover itself and then check the valves. This uses a 12mm socket. Take this little guy out, set him down, take the valve cover off and gently put it down on a soft, comfortable bed of microfiber, and then use the valve cover as a drain catch. Well, I don't really see anything wrong with the gasket. Maybe I just used it one too many times. Don't know. And to do this, the only thing we need is a 10mm, a 13mm, and a feeler gauge. And for the feeler gauge, the only thing we're going to use is a 4/1000 and a 5/1000, and that is it. So to check these, this over here are the adjuster screws. That's the lock screw at 13mm, and then the adjuster nut down here, 10mm. And we check the valves here. Yeah, so through the spark plug hole you can actually see the piston going up and down, and you can see the valves open and close. Just get it up on the compression stroke and your valves should loosen up. The correct way to do this is to use the little timing mark on the flywheel, but the cam lobe, the base cam lobe, is so big that I really don't worry about it. And then to check the valves, we're going to stick a 4/1000 in here. And see, I can feel a nice resistance. So that valve is okay, and a 5 won't fit. So over here on the exhaust side, if I take my 4, I can stick it here in the valve, and I can feel that there is some drag. And if I flip it over to the 5, that shouldn't go in. And it looking good. Okay, but I'm going to show you a little tip or trick that I do. Okay, so let's loosen up this valve and I'll show you what I mean. So using the 13mm, the lock nut off. Okay, and then we adjust it with this guy right here. And you can see that's tight, so going clockwise tightens it, and going counterclockwise loosens it up. Okay, so the typical way that this would be done would be to take a 10mm wrench, stick it on here, and then turn it until you get to the correct clearance. Like right there. However, I find, because I'm old and shaky, that the best way for me to do it is actually just to turn this by finger, and it's easier for me to hold this with my fingers than it is to hold it with a wrench. And I can slightly snug that down and grab the 13 and put a tiny bit of pressure on it. just to keep it in place. And then, knowing that it's somewhat snug, I can put the wrench back on it and snug this down. So that's adjusted, and the 5 won't go into it, so that's good. Now let's put the valve cover gasket on, and since these are silicone gaskets, we need to clean all the oil. I mean, silicone does a really good job of sealing up. However, it doesn't like to have oil on them. So we need to make sure that all this stuff is cleaned up in the crevices so that it doesn't leak on the mating surface. And then same thing with the valve cover. I am going to clean all this oil out, and then we will install the new gasket. And then the final step before putting the gasket on is to spray some brake cleaner and then go around the outside, cleaning everything off. Grab a gasket, pop it on. Pop the cover back on. Put the nut back on. Okay, that's it for this side. Now we'll just do exactly the same thing for the other side. So this side is going to be just the same. Okay, so my exhaust valve was a little bit too loose, so I'm gonna break that free, and then grab my 4 and stick it in here, tighten this up. I love adjusting valves. Okay, holding that in place, tighten this guy up a little tiny bit. Now I'm going to clean this up like I did the last one, and we'll install the new gasket on it. Okay. Okay, that's it. I think we're done with the valves and valve covers. But on the bright side, boy, those gaskets look kind of cool, don't they? Awesome. Let me button this up and I'll be right back. And one last cool tip for the day. You know how we were setting the valve clearance at 4/1000ths? What do you do if you don't have a feeler gauge? Why, look at this. Standard piece of paper. I stick my calipers on it, and it is 4/1000ths of an inch. Could probably tear a piece of paper off and use it for a feeler gauge. Pretty cool, eh? Anyway, that's it. I'm going to start up the engine and let it run for a second, check for leaks. Be right back. Okay, I started the engine up and let it run for a little while. No leaks, so that's good. I'll check it as I go out for a ride. Make sure everything's good, but I know now the valves are good. Next video, we're going to change the oil in the engine, the transmission, and the differential. So stay tuned for that, and that's it for today. See you later.